tomorrow morning, you'll eat breakfast because it's the most important meal of the day. You've heard that your whole life, except nobody told you. It was written by a cereal company. For most of human history, breakfast didn't exist. The Romans ate once a day and thought morning eating was a sign of weakness. 3 meals, your morning hunger, the whole rhythm. None of it came from your body. Someone decided it for you. The question is who?
Let me start with the strangest part. Your hunger is not entirely yours. For roughly 300,000 years, humans ate the way every other animal eats. When there was food, you ate. When there wasn't, you didn't. A hunter-gatherer didn't sit down to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They grazed. They gorged after a kill. They went hungry for stretches, sometimes long ones. And their bodies were built for exactly that irregularity, for feast and famine, not for a fixed daily timetable. There was no schedule. There was no clock. There was only the food itself, and whether you had any. So the idea that a day contains a set number of meals, eaten at set times, is not ancient. It is not natural. It is an invention. And the strange thing, the thing almost nobody realizes, is that we can name the people who built it.
Start with Rome. The Romans ate one main meal a day. They called it the cena, and they took it in the afternoon. In the morning, a Roman might have a few bites, some bread, a little cheese, maybe leftover food from the night before. A small, unimportant thing called the jentaculum. But sitting down to a full meal in the morning was looked down on.
The food historian Caroline Yeldham has described how the Romans viewed eating more than once a day as a form of gluttony, not a routine, a weakness. To them, needing breakfast meant you lacked self-control, that your appetite was running your body instead of the other way around. Sit with that for a second. The meal you have been told you cannot skip, the meal marketed to you as essential, the Romans considered it a moral failing. But here's what's fascinating. If breakfast was shameful in Rome, how did it become sacred? The answer runs through the next 1,500 years, and it has almost nothing to do with nutrition.
In medieval Europe, the main meal came around midday, and it was called dinner. Not the evening meal, the midday one. In fact, the word itself gives the game away. Dinner comes from the Old French dîner, which meant to break the fast. It originally described the first meal of the day, whenever you happened to take it. There was no fixed hour hiding inside the word. What we now call supper was just a lighter thing, eaten before the daylight ran out. And breakfast was still suspect. The church tied morning eating to gluttony and sloth. To eat before your prayers, before you had earned it with work, was seen as indulgent. So people ate when the work paused and the sun allowed. That was the whole system. Not 3 meals, not fixed times. Daylight and labor decided when you ate.
And then, daylight and labor changed completely. Here is where the story stops being about food and starts being about factories. Before the 1800s, most people worked where they lived, on farms, in workshops attached to the house. You ate when the work let you, in the rhythm of your own day. But the Industrial Revolution did something no ruler and no religion had ever managed. It pulled millions of people out of the home and put them inside the factory. And a factory runs on a clock. Shifts began at a fixed hour. Breaks came at a fixed hour. A whistle blew and everyone ate, whether their bodies were asking for food or not. For the first time in human history, when you ate was decided not by hunger, not by daylight, but by a machine's schedule.
The historian Abigail Carroll traces exactly this shift in her book, 3 Squares, The Invention of the American Meal. Meals stopped being shaped by appetite and started being shaped by the timetable of industrial work. Breakfast became the meal you ate before the commute, fuel loaded in before you left the house. Lunch became the compressed break in the middle of the shift,
a word that barely existed in this sense before the factory made it necessary. And dinner slid to the evening, to the moment the factory finally released you. 3 meals, 3 fixed times. Not because your body wanted them, because the working day now demanded them. Your great-grandmother's mealtimes were not handed down from nature. They were handed down from a factory whistle.
But a schedule alone doesn't make you believe. A timetable can tell you when to eat. It can't make you feel that skipping a meal is dangerous or that a certain food belongs to a certain hour. To turn 3 meals a day into an unquestioned law of nature, someone had to sell it to you. And in the early 20th century, someone did.
In Battle Creek, Michigan, a doctor named John Harvey Kellogg ran a health sanitarium, feeding his patients a plain, bland cereal he had developed as part of a regimen for clean living. That cereal became cornflakes, and cornflakes became an industry. For the first time, there was a product that only made sense if people ate a specific thing at a specific time of day. The breakfast cereal business didn't just want breakfast to happen. It needed breakfast to be a ritual, so it spent enormous sums of money turning it into one. Then came the bacon. In 1925, a public relations man named Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and the man who more or less invented modern propaganda, was hired by a company that sold bacon. The problem was simple. Americans ate light breakfasts. Coffee, maybe a roll. Bernays needed them to eat more and heavier. So he did not advertise bacon. He was cleverer than that. He commissioned a survey of physicians, writing to around 5,000 doctors and asking whether a hearty breakfast was better for the body than a light one. Enough of them agreed, and Bernays took that answer straight to the newspapers. Doctors recommend a hearty breakfast, and what could be more hearty than bacon and eggs? It was never a health discovery. It was a sales campaign wearing a lab coat. And it worked so completely that bacon and eggs became the definitive American breakfast, a tradition invented in a public relations office. Even the phrase you grew up with, the most important meal of the day, was carried into your head the same way. It was popularized by breakfast cereal advertising to sell more breakfast cereal. Not a finding about your body, a slogan about their product. This didn't just change what you eat. It changed your body. The hunger you feel at noon is not a simple, honest signal that your stomach is empty. Ghrelin, the hormone that drives your appetite, does not only rise when you actually need fuel. It rises in anticipation of the times you normally eat. Your body learns your schedule, and it begins the hunger before there is any real need for food. Which means the growl you feel at your lunch hour can be a scheduled event. A conditioned reflex, trained into you over years, firing on the clock, whether or not your body requires a single calorie. This is why people who deliberately change their eating patterns, who skip the morning meal or eat only once a day, find that after a couple of weeks, the old hunger simply stops arriving on time. It was never a fixed biological alarm. It was a habit your body had memorized so deeply, it felt like instinct. The 3-meal day didn't just fill your calendar. It reached inside and rewrote your reflexes until a schedule built for factories and sold by advertisers started speaking to you in the voice of your own hunger.
So, what did we actually trade? We took eating, one of the oldest, most instinctive things a body can do, and we handed its timing over to the clock.
To the factory owner who needed synchronized breaks, to the advertiser who needed a ritual to sell into, to a rhythm designed for productivity and profit, and never once for you. We gained real things: coordination, a shared table at a shared hour, the simple convenience of knowing when the people around us will eat. But we lost something quieter and harder to see. We lost the ability to hear our own bodies. We taught ourselves to be hungry on command, and then we forgot that we had ever been taught.
Most of the systems that run your life are invisible for one reason. They feel like nature. You don't question 3 meals a day for the same reason a fish doesn't question water. It's just there. It's just how things are. But it isn't how things are. It's how someone decided things would be. A Roman moralist who thought your breakfast was a weakness. A factory owner who needed your stomach to run on his clock. A cereal doctor? An ad man with a survey and a newspaper contact. Their decisions are still sitting inside you right now, wearing the mask of appetite. Tomorrow morning, you'll feel it. The pull toward the kitchen. The quiet certainty that you're supposed to eat now. That feeling is real, but it isn't ancient, and it isn't yours. It was installed. And now, at least, you know who told you to be hungry.